Welcome to the new Design for Living, where we are reimagining what is broken, where we are thinking about how we are going to live in the new year, where we are considering, given the contrast that we have, that contrast being cruelty, how we want to treat each other, how we want to treat ourselves. And so today, it's just you and me. I just needed some one-on-one time with you today. And my heart is full. My mind is full. There's a lot to share and talk about. So I'm really glad that you're here. 907-222-1061 is the phone number. And I will actually answer the phone, which is always a beautiful thing. That's what KONR Radio brings to us here in Anchorage. Local broadcasters, local signal, and a local telephone where someone will answer the phone. So as we get going today, I look forward to hearing from you. So here we are inside the energy of solstice. Last night, I was a part of an absolutely beautiful 20th annual winter solstice celebration. My beloved soul sister and I, Christina Young, we have been bringing a solstice event to the community every year. Even when I was in New Jersey caring for my mother, she continued on with it, and I'll always be deeply grateful for that, because when I came back, of course, we synced right up again and continued to bring it to the community. This year, we brought it over to Gather because it's such a sacred and beautiful place. And I want to thank Lance and Jenna for bringing their voices. It was just absolutely beautiful, just so great. And the 20 women who came out. And it just continues to confirm something I feel deeply within myself and also on the surface, which is that big change is happening for women, and we are seeking that which we know, ritual, connection, the sacred. And it was an absolutely phenomenal evening last night. I needed the medicine for sure. And so the poetry and the songs and the connection and the silence and the theme, right? The gifts of the darkness. This is a theme that means a lot to me. Not just for solstice, but it is appropriate for this time of the year because sometimes I feel that we've moved very far away from the natural way of right now. You know, this is a time to lean in. You know, I know that for myself and others, for a lot of us, the darkness is difficult to manage. And you have to have your strategies to just get through each and every day. We're getting like a second of light, so things really aren't changing for a few more weeks, maybe even a month. So strategies are super important right now to help us sit in the darkness, even if it's uncomfortable. Like I've said many times, one of the great skills of the new Design for Living is learning how to be more comfortable in that discomfort. Things like, here's a strategy I use all the time. The darkness is really, really difficult for me, and I'm going to be okay with that. Or I am okay with that. You know, that sentence allows for my discomfort and my own compassion to myself to sit in that discomfort and not feel like I have to do something about it. You know, the mind is constantly telling me its opinion about what is. And I always try to drop down into my heart to hear what it has to say. And these days, we are in the season of stillness. It's the natural way. I know we have this merry and bright that presses up against us. I know we have the holidays, the holy days, and all that is this time of the year. And yet, our ancestors used this time for gathering, connection, sitting by the fire, sharing food, some of which, of course, does happen during the holidays, but you know where I'm coming from. This willingness to sit in the stillness, the willingness to spend some time leaning into the gifts of the darkness. There's been a lot of darkness this year, and yet the darkness always yields a gift. You know, last night I was talking about what would life be like if we didn't have the darkness? What would we miss if we didn't have the dark sky? All that we couldn't grow if we didn't have the dark dirt. Of course, the womb of creation, the feminine herself, birthing life. So the darkness is as necessary as the light. And I hope as you move through this time, whether it's with others, your kids, your partner, your coworkers, your friends, your family, yourself, that you think about, you contemplate as you look back, what might be a gift that the darkness of 2025 has given you. Because when you live in a place like Alaska where the darkness is so severe, it does create a deep and profound gratitude for when that sun does come back. It's quite an extreme place to live. Also, going forward, I'm going to take the Chinese New Year theme seriously because the year of the snake, man, I have shed more this year than all exfoliating treatments combined. I truly don't think, and I hope there isn't, anything left to shed in the last days of the year. This has been a massive experience for all of us, save but a few. I'm going to talk a little bit about this snake medicine because it has happened personally, professionally, and clearly collectively. And so part of what my topic is today is that this year has brought us unimaginable change, and yet here we are with it. And that's part of the new design model. The new design model is the bridge. It gives us some of those strategies to walk from what was towards what is emerging. We don't have a lot of practice and we don't have a lot of education in change. We certainly don't have a lot of teaching enough, I don't think, it's part of my passion, about the space in between what was and what is becoming. The proverbial chrysalis, the cocoon, and the story of the caterpillar into the butterfly. We know the caterpillar, we know the butterfly, but we don't really like the in-between, the chrysalis, where it's messy and chaotic and dark and tight, where we don't have a sense of who we have been, and we don't have a sense of what is coming. It can be an extremely uncomfortable place to be, and yet we are designed by nature to be in that cocoon. And I've always found two things phenomenally fascinating about the caterpillar to the butterfly story. Number one, that if I was to slit the cocoon, if I felt bad for the butterfly, if I was like, oh my gosh, like it's got to want to come out of that, I'm going to slit it open, well, I would kill it. I would take away the opportunity, the necessity that that butterfly needs to be in that tightness so that as its wings are growing, they are strengthening themselves as they try to press up against that outer and inner shell that is the cocoon. And that's so important to remember as human beings. If you're in a cocoon right now, it is sacred. Oh my gosh. If you're in a tough spot right now, if you can relate to something ending and something not yet coming into its place, you're in a sacred place of transformation. You're in the in-between. Don't let your mind, I want to encourage you not to let your mind convince you that you have to slit your own cocoon open so you can get out of it as quickly as possible. Because the mind is what's uncomfortable in the cocoon. The mind needs certainty. That's why it's always pointing towards the past and oftentimes fearful of the unknown. Because it needs to rest on something specific, something tangible, something measurable. But we're moving from the head to the heart, from the mind to the heart, which I call the brains of the operation. The heart wants back in the game of life. It's got so much. It's the heart that's inside that cocoon. That's the intelligence. And so as much as you want to get out of the discomfort, I want to encourage you to find a way to be okay with the discomfort because you are in a sacred stage of becoming. It's just absolutely true. So there's that. But the other part of that story, When I was writing my book, The Confusion Experiment, and I was really in that cocoon myself for those 100 days where I meditated for an hour every day for 100 days. You can hear the audiobook of The Confusion Experiment at that Podbean site where this show now lives. You got to scroll down quite a bit. But there are some great episodes from COVID there where I talk about change, confusion, uncertainty, and chaos, as well as the audiobook and the findings of those 100 days in that cocoon. Because I went in one way. I went into that cocoon as one person. I came out completely different. And the lessons in that cocoon are still with me today because they're based on principle, and principle always is. But here's the other part. Inside the caterpillar are the imaginal cells of the butterfly. That means that inside the caterpillar are the cells of what it's going to become. And being in the cocoon allows those cells to be agitated and activated into their fullness. Now, that's an intelligence. That's an intelligence that knows. I always say this. That's the intelligence that knew the rose, stuffed it into a bud, and then the seed, and then the dirt for the sheer joy of the bloom. That's an intelligence that knows the caterpillar, stuffs a few of its cells knows the butterfly and stuffs some of its cells into the caterpillar for the sheer joy of the transformation. And I truly believe that's the truth of us. And that's what's happening right now. We are in a cocoon. Humanity is in the chrysalis. And we are going through a very painful process where everything is broken. We are literally ingesting ourselves, just like the caterpillar does, in order to become the next version of ourselves. And that's what the new design for living is all about. One of the many programs that are out there, one of the many visions that are out there right now, helping us create this roadmap together. Because in the old design model, we were given the roadmap. Here, follow this, and you'll get to the destination of a happy, successful life. Well, that's over, as is the authority figures outside of ourselves that we gave our power away to because the old design model said, these are the people you can trust. Turns out, not so much. So it's interesting that we're in a time where there's all this meaning assigned to these days, and yet things are losing their meaning. And it's very uncomfortable to have things that used to be meaningful lose their meaning. It just creates this very uncomfortable, dangling, tightrope kind of feeling. That's where ritual comes in. That's what yesterday was about. That's what these days are about. It's what candle lighting is about. Whatever it is, there's so much on social media. It's pretty phenomenal how many videos there are that offer us ideas for ritual. Also, if I see one more video that tells me how I can use cottage cheese, I'm really going to lose it. I mean, seriously. That's the downside of social media. Everybody's telling me what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, what to eat, what not to eat. And I did it. I tried that mushroom powder. Disgusting. If you're a coffee drinker, you're never going to drink that stuff. I still have half a bag. Last night I thought, you know what? It's okay if you just throw this out or just save it and put it into the dirt of whatever you're going to grow this year. I mean, that is dirt. If the worst cup of coffee I ever made still tastes better than a cup of that thing. It's just not going to happen. And so we have all of these, I'm sure, anchored in good intentions, but it's intense. And it's still, to some degree, the old design model, where there's an outer source telling me what I should do, shouldn't do, should say, shouldn't say, what to eat, what not to eat, do this, don't do this, don't do that. The new design model is not that. The new design model is all about turning you back to yourself, giving you the opportunity to realize you've got something within you that knows. You've got an intelligence within you that is waiting to connect to you and to help sync up with you. That inner compass that tells you whether this is yours to eat, drink, this person to hang out with. That's what the new design model is all about, helping us live from the inside out, because all these many years, it's been from the outside in. Well, when the outside is collapsing, is dysfunctional, is unhealthy, is cruel by intention, that is no longer what I, perhaps you as well, want influencing my decision making. 2025, the year of the snake. This is just all interesting to me. I know there's various levels that you can go deep in or completely ignore, but I just find these things interesting. Numerology, astrology, these ancient guideposts. I like that they lay a framework around the chaos, the confusion, and this unimaginable change that we're going through. For me, it's helpful. 2026, I believe, starting on the 17th of February, the year of the horse, which, let me tell you, if there was any year to follow the snake, think about that. One is dragging its belly along the desert floor. That's pretty symbolic of 25. The other is, galloping. When my friend told me about that, I said, oh, yeah, the year of the racehorse. She goes, no, nobody said it was a racehorse. I'm like, well, you don't know me. As a triple Aries, there's no galloping. We're going to be off to the races. I feel it now. I feel like I'm inside that gate at a horse race, and I am in that position of poised and just ready for the bell, and that gate opens, boom, here we go. But until then, I am choosing to remain still, to lean in, to listen. The stillness and the quiet speaks quite loudly when you slow down enough to listen to it. And so the year of the snake, and in numerology 2025, the number 9, a 9 year, a year of shedding, a year of completion, a year of final chapters, and as a result, a year for telling the truth to ourselves and then consequently to others. I just would love to hear anything that's resonating with you. Maybe what truth you told yourself or someone else this year. What did you shed? What did you complete? What final chapter wrote itself? Some of that happened even beyond our own desires, especially in relationships. Oh my gosh. 2025 for me will go down in history as the relationship year. Why? In part because we have been growing and changing so much. To me, COVID was the marker. Something happened when we were imposed upon ourselves during that time period, when we were forced to look at the choices we were making, the lives we were living, the jobs we were holding, the people we were bringing into our most intimate space. And for these last several years, that has been the shakeup. I understand, though I've never read the book, this saying, the old skin cannot hold the new wine. Like when you change so definitively inside of yourself, like whoever was hanging out with you when you're the caterpillar, if they have not also gone through transformation, when you become that butterfly, you don't hang out with caterpillars and they don't hang out with you. Birds of a feather flock together. It took me all this time to figure out what these sayings really, really meant. But when you go through deep change, and we all have, so many of us have, the outer must change. Now, we always have the opportunity to do that on our own, to rearrange the outer skin. For many, there is no rearrangement yet. You're just hanging out in this brand new, very raw feeling. When that snake sheds that skin, it's in a raw state. But if you don't get to it, life is designed in such a way that it will do it for you because it has to. It's called evolution. It's called growth. It's called change. And so this really has been a year of unimaginable change. And I haven't even gotten to what's happening in society and in in the government, the end of the two-party system as we know it. But for right now, I want to continue to talk about this snake medicine. I was doing a little research on this, and it's very fascinating. And just suspend your thinking. Even if you're pushing against it or your mind's like, this is stupid, why aren't we listening to music? I want to encourage you just to let that thought be. Let that judgment be. Because snake medicine exposes what's expired. If you just think about that in your own life, your professional life, your family life, certainly society, America, our government, the political world, we have clearly seen what's expired. Now, if it's what you want to expire, then great. But if you're still clinging or weren't prepared for what's expired to expire, that's where the tenderness can be. This is a year in which we've been shown quite clearly what's outgrown itself, including what we've outgrown and who we have outgrown. I mean, when you go through change, when you change, when your values change, when you mature, when you become more emotionally mature, spiritually mature, when you go through that metamorphosis, it's your hope, your desire, sometimes your longing that the people around you are also going to change so that, again, you can flock together. And a lot of times we hold back our own evolution, our own going forward, so that others can potentially come with us. And I mean, I have a lot of clients that have actually stopped their own growth in the hopes that by turning back around, by waiting, those who are not where they're at would catch up, so to speak, would initiate their own growth so that the relationship could stay on as it's been or stay on for the next level of growth. But it turns out that's not how it goes. And that can be very painful and very tender. And so that's a side effect of this year. How many have had to go on? How many have chosen to go on because they've put the value of their own self first, perhaps for the first time? When you really have that realization and you go, wow, I can't change that person. I can't get them. I can't change them. And you lay it down and you continue to move forward with the door always open. But that's something else that's gone on for us, this unwillingness to not live because we're waiting for the people we love to come along. This realization that the permission we need to give ourselves to live and to grow and to be who we came here to be was perhaps in the hands of others. So that's just a very surface level observation, my own and others that I've spoken to and worked with about this snake medicine. You know, this understanding that when things fall away in a year like this, it's not because they're failing or you're failing, it's because they're finishing. You know, this perpetual need for youthfulness, anti-aging skincare, don't even get me there. You know, our complete and total resistance to not just aging and maturing as a natural way of life, but to how we look when we do. So much is broken because it was built on a false principle. But when you build your life, your business, your friendship, your relationship, your families on principles that are real and eternal, the principle of love, the principle of oneness, the principle of kindness, those are principles. Look at these beautiful Buddhist monks that have been walking from Texas to Washington, D.C. People are so desperate for the feeling and the visual experience of kindness and compassion. They are lining the streets, tears running down the faces of men, women, and children as these beautiful monks and their lead dog walk for peace. You're going to be on social media? Go find that and allow yourself to be lifted. You have to give yourself permission to be lifted because there's so much out there that is so heavy that we can't affect. And like I've always said in the new design model, we try to really be honest with ourselves about what we can affect. And it turns out we can affect ourselves and we can affect our community. In fact, right now, I have the last hours of a fundraiser I'm doing for the Anchorage Gospel Rescue Mission. These guys are doing beautiful work for those that are hungry and homeless. They're on tutor. They have so many beautiful programs. I talked to them the other day. They're feeding over 200 people. That number is growing because of this brutal cold weather. 3 meals a day, helping people get to doctor's appointments, giving them clean, fresh, warm clothing. These are the people to support. You know, that's another thing. Our mind tends to judge and have opinions about who's homeless, limiting to who we just perhaps see on the street corner. Not that they aren't worthy, because they are. They're a human being. And there's many people right now economically crushed, on the edge. That's why it's so difficult to deal with intentional cruelty, like what's going on with health insurance now. So we need each other. We have an opportunity to be with and for each other. And this fundraiser that ends tonight at 11 o'clock, man, if I could raise over $500 or something like that, that would really be fantastic. So I hope that's something you might be able to do today. So let's take a look at some of the things that have been ending this year. And again, if any of this resonates with you, give me a call. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about this year of the snake. So one of the first things we released is old versions of ourselves, to which I say, hallelujah. You know, the version of you that survived, lived in survival mode. Again, these are not necessarily actual conditions as much as these are states of consciousness. These are ways of believing. These are thought patterns that come out of the old model. Survival. You know, the version that performed for love due to childhood trauma. The version that people pleased. That's over. And again, not to say that you won't go on and please someone with your kindness, your compassion, your touch, but not from duty or obligation or a sense of not enoughness, and that gesture will then bring that piece of you back to yourself. The how and the why of it is going through much needed change. Or maybe the version of you that dimmed down. You know, that's something I grew up with. You're too much. Well, who wants to be too much? If I'm too much, then I won't be loved. Now, again, I don't know that everybody knew what maybe that experience was like for me. I just feel like maybe people around me didn't quite know what to do with all that energy I was emitting at a very young age. But nonetheless, dim it down so you can be accepted, especially women. Well, let me tell you something. That's over too. Oh my gosh. The divine feminine is rising. Women are rising. I'm really excited to work with women in very specific ways in the new year. Any of those versions of ourselves that made us be seen, be loved, given permission, all of that. And that's why so many relationships have changed, because we've been unwilling to know that that version of us isn't working anymore and continue to be it, even at the cost of relationships or jobs or whatever the cost may have been. That's so powerful, where the loss of the outer is lesser than the loss of your own self to yourself. I mean, once you know, you know. You can't go back to not knowing. And so these old versions of ourselves, in the new design model, we have ritual. for those old versions. We extract ourselves from those roles, first and foremost, because the version of ourselves that were in those roles didn't know any better. If we did, we'd be out of it sooner, but we didn't. Now we do. So we extract the essence of ourselves from those roles, just like the snake's skin. It appeared like it was us, but it was really a skin. It was a covering. It was a role. And underneath this beautiful pink perfection, this newness, that we bring with us, that version of ourselves comes into the center of our hearts for whatever it is that we are becoming next. Even if you don't know what you're becoming next, one thing is for sure, you're no longer that. And from my own experience, yeah, it can be very tender. It can be extremely tender, the loss that you have to endure in order to gain yourself. But that's a conscious choice, to choose you. Just know you're not alone. Number 2, old bonds. Again, these are the relationships that were held together by that version of you. Add to it guilt, duty, obligation, loyalty program. That's a big one in my family, in my upbringing. As an Italian, I mean, you broke the loyalty protocol at the mafia level. You had a heavy brick around your ankle. That's it. You know? I mean, even with my dad, because he just didn't have the tools, you know, and I didn't have the awakening like I have now. But, you know, my dad, don't cross him. He knew how to hold a grudge because that's what the programming taught him. I truly believe that if he was a man now, a younger man now, he would be doing things differently. Or maybe the bonds that we were involved in because of habit, just by habit. You know, one day you wake up to the inertia and you're like, what am I doing? Anything that was built on a false premise, an outdated model, or an old version of you or even them. Some of us experienced change imposed upon us. Whichever way it was, it cracked open this year. It fell apart. So many people saying it's just not a match. If you can get that language in the ending, it's helpful. If you're in a position where you can bring that kind of a language to a relationship or friendship or a work relationship, whatever it is that's ending, it's no longer a match. It's okay to grow apart. Turns out it's perhaps more natural than staying together forever. So this understanding that when you go through change like this, it includes things being completed. It includes relationships coming to a close. And maybe if you're lucky, if you're with someone or a group of people that can understand this kind of language, you can create a new container. I've helped a lot of couples who have gone through divorce. And they love each other, but as a marriage, as a container, something that contained their love, it's not working anymore. It no longer works. So I help them find a new container that satisfies both parties, either and mostly because there's children involved and they want to present that to their kids. That's possible. It's absolutely possible. Number 3, there's the word of the year, timelines, old timelines. What does that really mean? Well, the paths that drained you, you know, when you think about duty, obligation, loyalty, things we did by guilt, you know, all of those reasons why, you know, you look at what drained you, and we're just not willing to be drained unless that's what we choose. That's another big agitator this year. So many are exhausted by the design of the old design model. We've normalized exhaustion. People run around this time of year to exhaustion. It's not really working for so many. Old timelines, dreams you outgrew. I'd have to say that teaching was a game changer for me, because after COVID and the death of my mom and the trauma that I experienced, that I didn't fully and completely heal until the end of 2024, I was in a very tough place with my dreams, plans, and goals that I had poured my heart and soul into, that these outer circumstances interrupted or threw over the cliff. And I found myself trying to continue to work something that was best put down, and giving myself permission to let go of goals and plans and dreams that were clearly beyond their time was so helpful mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I feel it right now. I hope that you can find ways to give yourself permission to just put down what is no longer. But be sure to extract yourself from it first. And that's what I had to do. I had to extract myself from the dream. And in doing so, it gave me permission to what? To redream. To give myself permission to go, all right, well, you're this age now. You're at this time of your life now. All of that is behind you. What now? And that is so refreshing and healthy and helpful. The identities that no longer fit. That's another thing we dropped off this year. Identities. I was talking to someone the other night, and they were saying that there's, at least one generation that has completely swung the pendulum in the opposite direction when it comes to identities and roles. And that's part of the new design model. Sometimes you got to swing all the way in the opposite direction to find the new center again. Pronouns, gender fluidity, all of these experiences that for me observationally and in talking with this individual made me realize, oh, wow, this is part of that cocoon. This is part of that transformation. Things that just stopped moving, we couldn't get started again. That's the kind of year it's been, where you realize, oh, I guess that's over too. But what comes from that is freshness that more aligns with who you are now and who you are becoming. Number 4, old emotions. I'll share with you, one of the things I experienced this year was emotional maturity, and it was in direct relationship to these old other releases that I talk about. My maturity level was at the level of the old self that I was still inside the skin of, that consequently did not allow me to really experience the next level of emotional maturity that's appropriate for me right now in my life. And because I'm always willing to really self-reflect, to self-correct, I had to come to terms with some unconscious patterns I absorbed from my mom in a few cases, from both my parents in some other cases, that kept the lid on a natural evolution of my own maturity. And I think that's something we can see that's happening across the board. Americans, for the most part, have been living at the level of adolescence. But wow, if we're not getting a shake-up now, some are not changing, some are remaining childish. But so many of us are realizing, oh my goodness, I need to grow up. I don't want that old emotion to infiltrate the new version of myself. And so when you're willing to self-reflect, to self-correct, very, very healthy. I had some moments of jealousy this year because I come out of a program mostly through my radio training of competition, which comes out of the belief that there's not enough. And so you got to get yours. You got to get the audience. You got to get the ratings. You got to be number one. It's taken a long time to compassionately break that apart and let it rest. But because of my commitment to being as aware as I can be in every moment I have, when I met that old moment, I thought, okay, who do I really want to be here? And what I realized is I wanted to be a more mature version of myself. Okay, well, what would that more mature version of yourself say? What would she do? How would she act? If you looked back on this moment, how would you describe that mature version of yourself? Those kinds of questions, super helpful. That's one of the things about the new design model. We love living in the question. Questions are everything in the new design model. When you don't know, live in the question. That's another good practice. Practice living in the question, not needing an answer. If you live in questions long enough, the answers will emerge, not from outer sources, but from deep within your own self. Very powerful practice. Old emotions. Grief, fear, rage, exhaustion, and just this overall feeling right now like I'm done. That would be a great t-shirt. Maybe I need to add it to my collection. No more of this, whatever this is. And when you get there, and if you're there or you've been there and you're doing this year-end review of all of this, one thing to maybe realize is all of that comes out of not wanting to break you, though it may, but to clear you, again, for this new version, for who you're becoming. This life that we're seeking to create that mirrors this healthier sense of self. Just being willing to feel it is the release in and of itself. I was talking to a friend earlier today. She was sharing with me the family roles that she's complete with. Try as she might, it's evident that it's over. That's a level of maturity as well. It's easier to give birth than resurrect the dead. Sometimes you have to take people's non-response or unwillingness to engage as a sign of their boundary and to respect it by laying down your own efforts and letting it be. But in her sharing, she was saying, without these roles that family created and gave me, I feel like I'm starting a new life that I've never, ever had before. So that's the kind of depth that we're dealing with as far as this year of unimaginable change. 907-222-1061 if you want to share. Number 5, the illusion of going back. You can't stuff the genie back in the bottle. Once you know, you can't unknow. Unless, you're sleeping. But even then. But that's really another massive shift in 2025. The illusion of going back. You go back to COVID. What did everybody say? When are we going back to normal? When are we going back to what was? When are we going back to how it used to be? Part of that was the mind. I mean, we literally lost our minds during that time because change was imposed upon us so severely. Our lives were, a stick jammed in the wheel, kind of a stop moment. All we could do was say, when are we going back to what was? Well, since that time, there's really no going back. And to the degree that you've learned to accept that and work with it and put new tools in your toolbox, the better off you've been. So not only can't you go back to who you were before you shed the skin because that person isn't there, clearly the skin of that self is laying in a heap on the floor. I mean, believe me, I've stepped back into it and tried to pull it back up and wrap it up around me. Painful, because you can't do it. That's why in the new design model, we have such reverence for transformation and change at this level. So excited about the things I'm bringing in 2026. And we can't go back to an America that either truly was or lived in the illusion or the promise of democracy. I mean, we are in something that is significant. And for me, I simply have to remember that every moment I live is a creative moment. Every thought is a creative, not by a pressure unto myself, but as a reminder. Where am I going to put my attention? Am I going to put my attention on things I can't affect and then be emotionally sunk by the depression that comes out of those stories? Am I going to dwell on the intentional cruelty of people who have sicknesses and sick minds? Like, here's something I said the other day. Anyone who's still, I did a video on this, and I'll use the analogy again right now. You can't get water from a dry well. So there's a well, and the well has always meant there's water there. That's what the well does. That's what the well is, filled with water. And we bring our buckets to the well, we drop it down, and we get water. However, if the well is empty, no matter how many times you drop your bucket in that well, it's still going to come up empty. Now, you can blame the well, but you can't get water from a dry well. And no matter how many times you try, no matter how many times you rant and rage, the bottom line is, if the well is empty, there will be no water in your bucket. And yet, people choose to suffer because they think that an empty well should have water. Let's take a phone call. I love it. Okay. 907-222-1061 if you'd like to join the conversation. So if you're finding yourself or others shocked or surprised by people's behavior, you can't get compassion from a diseased mind. You can't get kindness from a narcissist. You can't get the America that either we had or you believed we had from a group of people that have a completely different agenda. So to the degree that we stop being surprised and stop needing there to be water in a dry well, the less suffering we'll have. Hi there. Welcome to KONR. Thanks for calling.
Yes, Camille. This is your friend, Kaleem.
Hi, Kaleem.
Yeah. I love where you're going with your conversation. Also, I'd like to know if you could maybe expound upon the principle of forgiveness. And if you could talk about that a little bit. And for example, a couple of things that's important to me is oftentimes we confuse forgiveness with total remission of any responsibility of the other parties. Mm-hmm. But forgiveness in the point of course, releasing that which may be binding us, yet at the same time setting appropriate boundaries and accountability for other parties. So I'll get off the air, but off the phone, I should say, but could you address that?
Well, can you address it so I can better understand what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, mainly the importance of forgiveness, but not confusing it with releasing the accountability of other parties who may be offenders. So oftentimes people confuse forgiveness with total release of accountability of the other parties. It doesn't necessarily mean that in my way of thinking.
Well, I mean, certainly in relationships, I have learned that I can't make somebody accountable, even pointing out things that could lead somebody to choose accountability. It really has to be a self-chosen.
Oh, absolutely. No, it wasn't about imposing upon other people's choices. It's about my expectation of the other person. And and no longer accepting their inappropriate behavior. Was my intention of saying that.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings up this boundaries. I think one of the things people are learning, because I didn't learn boundaries, but I think you learn how to create boundaries if that's where you're going. It's like Ram Dass when he said, "I love you. You're a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and I love you. I can't play with you, and I love you."
Exactly. Right. And on that note, something you mentioned earlier, so part of forgiveness also means my personal responsibility. I may now change my relationship with the offending party because of I expect responsibility. If the person does not choose appropriate behavior, then I need to then initiate some type of separation.
Right.
Oftentimes.
Yeah.
Well, what that means to each type of relationship is maybe unique in itself. Right.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, thanks, Kaleem. I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. I mean, that's definitely something that deserves an hour all by itself, is boundaries. What I learned this year, and this is wild, and I share all this with you because there's no blame. I'm not blaming, I'm observing. But I dug so deep this year, I went so deep this year that I uncovered a belief that said drawing a boundary for myself hurts another person. And as a result of that, I could see why I continued to people please, or I continued to do this, or I continued to do that. And when I say that, it didn't always involve another person, oftentimes myself, because I didn't know how to draw a boundary. Now I do. And it's new. Like when you draw a boundary and you've not really have a lot of experience with that, it feels wrong. However, it only feels that way because it's new. I realized that it was right for me. Even though it felt wrong, I realized that wrongness was really just newness. It's still a muscle that I'm strengthening. So yeah. I love that by Ram Dass. I love you. You're a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and I love you. I can't play with you. I can't bring you into that intimate space, and I love you. One of the great gifts of my spiritual education was learning that love is not defined by physicalities. You can love and not interact. Big, big, big shift. So with all of that, I want to remind you that whether you buy into this Chinese New Year or not, you can't, well, let me say it this way. I can't ride forward if I'm clutching what's already ended. I can't ride forward if I'm turning around and looking behind me. When you get to the point where you don't have a rearview mirror, but you just have what's in front of you, even if you can't see it all, you are heading in the right direction. And I am so excited because I've just launched a new mentoring program called From Confusion to Clarity. And I'm offering an end of the year special right now because I recognize that people are having various economic realities and need this kind of support. I am not a coach, and I honor everybody who's gone through coaching certification programs. But I have lived a life of transformation and change, and it's a topic that I know about. It's a topic that I have some wisdom from. And so if you or someone you know is going through change, caregiver, retirement, divorce, maybe a young person you know that is losing hope, maybe you even want to gift them this kind of a service, you can get all the information at my website. It doesn't reflect the special because I just decided to do that and I haven't had a chance. But I'm offering $50 off my 2 offerings. Whatever I can do to help people move through change, confusion, uncertainty, and help people get back up on their feet as quickly as possible. help people find their tools, help people fill their toolbox, walk alongside you as your inner knower is showing you the way, is something I'm really excited about. So you can find that and everything I do and everything that's coming, because more is coming, at CamilleConte.com. Listen, thanks so much for tuning in to the show. Last week's interview with Emma Hill, as well as this show, will be available via podcast on podbean.com, as well as Apple Podcasts. Take super good care of yourself. I'm going to leave you with some Michael Franti, because he always raises the frequency. And since we're just 2 hours away from the sun setting, this is the sound of sunshine going down.